Hello everyone. Today we will have two interesting stories. Before we get to that, I want to ask you to subscribe, like, and be sure to write comments in order to participate in the development of the community. Write how to improve my community, current topics and the stories you are interested in, and much more. I read and listened to all the comments. People write me stories by mail from different countries. There are problems with translation. I apologize for this. I will work on it and try to fix these errors. I want to thank everyone for their support and the people who wrote to me by mail, broadcast news stories. New videos on my channel are published every 2 days at 7 p.m. Don't forget to put a bell in order not to miss new videos. And now let's go. Hello, I want to tell you my story. I am 35 years old and have been married for 15 years. I married my wife only because I loved her very much. Right after the wedding, a year later, our son was born. I worked hard and tried hard for my family. I often arranged surprises for my wife. But I received reproaches that stop wasting our money on nonsense. One day I was returning from my mother-in-law's. She lives in another city. I took my wife's mobile phone and came across a very interesting correspondence. At that time, my wife was driving a car. I'm quoting what was in the message on my wife's phone. Spent the most wonderful night of my life with you. Now I'm playing with my son and I want to meet you again. Before that, I let my wife go to a reunion in her hometown. Halfway to our house, my world turned upside down. You just can't imagine what thoughts were in my head. When I told her about her mobile phone, my wife wanted to snatch it out of my hands and smash it to pieces. But when she realized that I already knew everything, my wife began to reproach me that it was all my fault because I treated her badly. I drove to our house in silence as if a volcano was erupting inside me. My wife told me everything all the way. After we got home, my wife started asking me for forgiveness. She swore by her health and the health of our child that it would never happen again. We had a lot of scandals and showdowns. In desperation, I broke the glass between the rooms and cut both hands. An ambulance took me away. The cuts were sewn up on both my hands. It's good that I didn't remain disabled, but scars adorn men. In the end, I believed my wife and forgave her. Our second son was born 2 years later. We've been planning this and really looking forward to it. I was over the moon with happiness. In fact, I was the only one watching the baby. I got up at night to calm him down. I often changed diapers for my son and so on. Well, it's been 5 years. I have built a magnificent cottage, although all this time I was listening to criticism from my wife that I'm doing everything wrong. When we had dinner, I told my wife that we live for the sake of the children. My dream is to bring her parents to this house, that we will help each other. I have often said that I love her very much. At the same time, I work overtime and earn very good money. Once I was engaged in the construction of our house. My wife invited her boss to visit. He is 20 years older than my wife. My wife invited him to advise us on how to build a house properly. I was very confused by this and decided to watch the recording from the DVR in my wife's car. When I watched the recording, the hairs on my head stood on end. She humiliated me in front of her boss. She said, "Look what a fool my husband is, and the eldest son is an alien like him." When they arrived at the office where they worked, my wife and boss started kissing very passionately. I can't believe my eyes and ears. But the next day, I found the strength. We sat down to dinner, and I made a scandal at the table. I told my wife straight out that she was cheating on me with her boss. My wife's eyes darted from side to side. "You're crazy. How can you think that about me?" my wife said. But in general, I didn't say much. I told her to invite her boss to our house and I would explain everything to him in detail. The next day, I decided to watch the DVR recording again. My beloved wife had a sincere conversation with her boss. She said that I already know everything and we need to solve this problem. My wife's boss replied so she wouldn't worry. That he will solve this problem and that I don't have any proof. I decided to take my wife's laptop and check her email. I found a correspondence with the boss. This correspondence lasted 5 years. My wife was pregnant with my child and was dating her boss at the same time. The boss liked to work his tongue between my wife's legs. At the same time, he is married himself, and he has a daughter the same age as my wife. 2 grandchildren, and an active wife. In general, I have not been able to finish reading this correspondence to the end. I took a knife and found out where my wife's boss lives. I didn't kill him. I just beat him up and left him in this world because his daughter begged me not to do anything stupid. It is clear that he contacted the police. He wanted to be protected from the jealous husband of his mistress. However, he later said that he had no complaints, and everything was decided. Maybe he felt fear and that I might come back. After all, my wife's exploits, I don't know who I can trust at all. I filed for divorce. At the moment, I live alone. Both sons are already adults and support me. They're both on my side. My wife was left alone because the boss's family found out about his adventures. After that, the boss and my wife stopped communicating. She's trying to get our relationship back, but I don't need a wife like that. Both sons sometimes come to visit their mother. She constantly asks them for forgiveness. I think it's her punishment to stay single for the rest of her life. That's the whole story. And what do you say about this? Before we move on to the advice of the author of the channel, we will have a second short story. Let's go. I am 28 years old. My girlfriend is 25 years old. When we started dating my girlfriend, she was just leaving her boyfriend. They had no relationship with him. She had a lot of problems with her ex-boyfriend, but eventually, after a while, he calmed down and stood behind my girlfriend. We started living together. Everything was fine with us, and we lived like this for almost 4 years. Then my girlfriend wanted a wedding. She said she was already 25 years old and no one needed her. All her friends were already married and so on. I didn't mind. I just wanted to make an offer in a year. But in the end, we got married 2 months later. Another year passes. I get a message from a certain Amanda on social media. Amanda writes to me that her boyfriend is cheating on her with my wife. Everyone already knows about it except me. She dropped a link to my wife's second profile. Judging by this profile, my wife was secretly communicating with this guy. There were no photos of my wife in this profile. But my wife's 3 best friends have been added as friends. But I thought it was a lie, and this profile is a fake. There is no irrefutable evidence, so I just took note of this information. More than 5 years ago, when I was talking to my wife's ex-boyfriend, he told me she was a good, loyal girl. I wasn't worried about cheating at all. But one day, my wife comes home tired from work. Dinner, TV, laptop, and she goes to bed. I walk past the bed and look at my wife. She's asleep. I turn off the light in the room and see something glowing from under the blanket. I look at my wife, who is holding a mobile phone in her hand and sleeping. I thought she was listening to music. It happens to her. She turns on the music and falls asleep. I carefully take her mobile phone to turn off the music. What do I see? I see recent correspondence. I am quoting what was written to my wife. "I adore you, my baby. You're the sexiest," and so on. In general, the lovebirds coo. The most interesting thing is that this is the guy. This is the guy. His ex-girlfriend Amanda wrote to me on social media. I was furious. I started shaking my wife. She wakes up and I tell her everything as it is, that I suspected her of cheating. And so I caught her by the hand. My wife immediately started crying a lot. As it turned out, this is an old acquaintance of hers. They had been having an affair for a long time. But she also has sex with him regularly. All my wife's friends already knew about it. I'm the only horned deer. She begged me to give her a chance, but I decided I wouldn't give her a chance. Girls, how can you do this to men? I'm very sad right now. I don't even want to live. The weather is nice outside. I'm thinking about how I can sleep for a couple of years. So I wake up and forget about everything. It's just really hard to get it out of my head. It's just a 10, literally right after the wedding. The infidelities began. All this time I thought my wife was a loyal and good girl. What an animal she turned out to be in the end. We have no children. My wife has just solved women's problems. We've already planned the children. A residential building is being built. In general, we had everything ahead of us. I don't understand why she did it. I can't forget about it, because I imagine them having sex. I can't figure out where her brains were. She's a married girl. How she got into bed with me afterwards. That bitch. My wife says she only loves me, but everything happened to him by accident. He offered to meet my wife out of old friendship. God, I can't wrap my head around this. When she came to his house, did she really not understand how everything could end? The conclusion is that all this was done intentionally. All this was repeated for 6 months. I really like sex myself. I had sex with my wife 2, 3 times a day. I could not imagine that this would not be enough for her. I have no one to talk to. That's why I'm telling my story here in this community. I'm going to divorce her in a week. I've already kicked her out of the apartment. I'm afraid to be alone. I've never been so hurt and lonely. By the way, I wrote to my wife's lover. I said, I know everything. This is after she had sex with him. I don't need my wife anymore. He can take my wife to him, and God is their judge. That's the whole story. What do you say about this? If you liked it, give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now let's move on to the opinion of the author of the channel. The opinion of the author of the channel. As always, I want to wish strength and patience to our heroes. There are 2 similar situations here. Both girls didn't appreciate what they had. I think they will regret their choice very much. In the first case, I would break the man's fingers and make my wife's boss bite his tongue, so that he no longer pokes them where he doesn't need to. But thank God that everything went well and you were not put in jail. In fact, we men need to control ourselves. It doesn't matter what bad things our wives and girls do, because the main goal of a girl is to evoke emotions in a man at any cost. If a girl can't do this, she will think about you all her life and try to get your relationship back. Take my word for it, because a girl is trying to make a man guilty. The girl does this so that psychologically she is absolutely not to blame for anything, but it's the girls themselves who drive it into their heads. If this does not happen, then she begins to think about what she has done. Most often, they come back later and beg for forgiveness. In the second case, the guy is also well done. Let his wife go to hell. In general, a person should not perceive separation as the end of the world. This is just the beginning of something new, the beginning of a new life. If you have watched to the end, I want to say thank you very much. I love you all. Thank you for joining me on this exciting journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. I appreciate your support and encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this story. Your participation and feedback are invaluable for shaping our content and promoting mutual understanding and community growth. Until we meet again.